An identity crisis can be defined as a moment in time where someone sort of questions who they are, what they are, and their purpose in life. And that's the exact same question posed by this Nothing Phone 3A Lite, because on the face of it, you do get some really good spec, and that includes a triple camera, a super vibrant display, and the classic Nothing transparent design on the back. But why did this phone even exist? And more importantly, has Nothing abandoned the allure around them in place of profits? The design profile of the Nothing Phone 3A Lite sort of looks like game as usual when you look at it, but when you dig a little deeper, that's definitely not the case, because the Glyph interface on the rear that Nothing is so synonymous and what it's been known for has been diluted all the way down to just a single light on the bottom left hand corner, which is a bit of a shame. You do still benefit from the essential key on the side here, which is really good, and at the bottom you get a single firing speaker alongside a SIM tray, which also holds an expandable memory card slot up to 2 terabytes. Now, about that single mounted speaker at the bottom, let's take a listen. And then when you flip to the front, you get a stunning 6.77-inch FHD Plus AMOLED display with 3000 nits of peak brightness and 2160 Hz of PWM dimming. It's bright, vibrant, and regardless of indoor or outdoor situations, content watching on here is really good. In fact, I would go as far to say for a phone that costs around £250-ish here in the UK, it punches well above its weight. So this phone on its design and display front is a bit of a mixed bag. When the Nothing Phone 3A Lite was announced, everyone thought there's some shocking similarities to the CMF Phone 2 Pro, because there's some areas that they're almost exactly the same. In fact, one of those areas is its CPU. This runs the MediaTek Dimensity 7300 Pro, which is the exact same one in the CMF Phone 2 Pro, and it's a really good CPU at this price point and in this phone. If you run it through 3D Mark's Lifestyle Extreme test, you actually get some really good figures. Things like stability sits at 99.3%, heat only jumps 2 degrees, and battery usage is only 5% in terms of thermals and throttling. It does a really good job, and it looks excellent. When you then use this on the OS front, again, it works flawlessly. Super smooth transitions, moving in and out, being able to customize your lock screen, wallpaper, home screen, all of that looks really good. And multitasking again is handled very easily, and all that looks really good. And then even if you jump into things like gaming on this phone, again, you get a really good experience. Gaming may not be at the flagship level, but it performs very well. Medium for everything, sometimes a bit high in FPS, for example, on things like Call of Duty Mobile. It runs really well, graphically it's pretty good, and you get pretty stable frame rates throughout. So again, on all those fronts, it's pretty good. And another similarity we want to talk about is its battery. 5000 milliamp hours and 33 watts of wired charging. Exactly the same, again, as the CMF Phone 2 Pro. So the similarities between the two are shockingly similar. And then on the OS front, you also get 3 years worth of OS updates and 6 years worth of security updates, which I believe, again, is exactly the same as the CMF Phone 2 Pro. Now, one of the weird differentials between this and the CMF Phone 2 Pro is actually linked to the 3 dots you see on the back here. It's cameras, because on here you get a 50 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro. If you compare it to the CMF Phone 2 Pro, you get a 50 megapixel wide, 50 megapixel telephoto, and a 8 megapixel ultra wide. So there are differences, but let's break down the camera systems of the 3A Lite. The main lens here is a 50 megapixel with OIS and 24mm lens. Now this performs very well in daylight conditions. Doesn't overly sharpen images, but there is a lot of processing here that does favor vivid colors and high contrast, which is generally the case in this budget category. Zooming in can lead to a loss of detail, so that can mean you get a bit more noise in your images. And then video, if you move across that, is 4K 30. Does a reasonably good job, but we found if you start panning on this phone, you do get that bit of ghosting and jittering as well. But generally speaking, if you're staying stable, you're going to get a pretty good shot. Ultra-wide, I expected with a low resolution sensor. It captures a decent amount of detail and quality, which are usable, but you can tell right away that this lacks the quality of the main lens and thus a lack of consistency in color and saturation. Switching from the main lens to ultra-wide again is pretty evident you're going to drop off. That ultra-wide is a 8 megapixel 120 degree field of view, 50 millimeters. And then the awful lens is the 2 megapixel macro. This is a complete gimmick, but if you did decide to use it, it does capture somewhat decent images overall. But when you compare this camera system to CMF Phone 2 Pro, you'll see that the Phone 2 Pro is clearly more capable and more dependable and more balanced overall, because that telephoto lens, it removes the 2 megapixel macro and still is able to provide a 50 megapixel telephoto for the same cost as the Phone 2A and produces pretty decent results as well. Throughout this review, we haven't really touched on what we mentioned at the start, and that's linking to the identity crisis that's facing Nothing. And that's very prominent with the Nothing Phone 3A Lite, because Nothing as a brand built a reputation around offering bloatware-free devices that had no ads and a near clean stock Android experience, minus a couple of Google app installations, which made a ton of sense. But recent tweets and messaging have come out that the budget range of Nothing phones will now have preloaded meta apps like Facebook and Instagram, and in some markets TikTok, which dilutes a lot of the messaging and what Nothing as a brand was known for, which is a huge shame. Then when you go across to other aspects of this, you see it more prominently. You now have something called a lock glimpse. So if you swipe right from your lock screen, you then see some static wallpapers. If you tap on these wallpapers, they will actually take you to preloaded ads, which don't sell you anything. It's just a landing page. But every click will generate revenue for Nothing. And that's the same thing with the applications preloaded. They are being paid by Meta or TikTok, ByteDance, to have those apps preloaded on devices to encourage more signups, more usability, more everything. And that does cloud the original message that Nothing had. The locked glimpse is removable, well, disableable, you can disable it, and you can delete those meta apps. But I think the overall rage that's happened in the local community to this is fully justified, even though this phone on its own merit, minus those things, is a really good phone. It has an excellent OS, really great dynamic display, looks fantastic, and although that Glyph interface is diluted, it's still pretty cool and it's completely unique in its own way. But the 3A Lite as a whole is a phone that's difficult to recommend, primarily because it's substandard versus the CMF Phone 2 Pro. So why does this exist? Well, it exists purely for one reason: money. And that is why this phone is something that we would not recommend buying, because it goes against the principles of what Nothing was all about, but also because this phone has only been brought out to serve the purpose of those ad revenue streams, like those preloaded ads and that lock glimpse. But let us know in the comment section below your thoughts on this new direction Nothing are taking and whether the 3A Lite is worth buying. Until the next one, as always, we out.